My mom gave my sister everything. Then I exposed what they hid from Dad. The day my sister got handed the keys to my dad's house, a house he built with his own hands, brick by brick, over 30 years, I was standing right there. Not in the front row. Not beside my family. I was standing near the back, holding a paper plate with cold food on it, like a guest at my own family's celebration. My mom smiled at my sister like she had just handed her the world. And honestly, she had. The car, the jewelry, the savings account, and now the house. I watched my dad clap. Proud. Happy. Completely unaware. And that was the part that broke something in me. Not the fact that I got nothing. I had learned to live with that years ago. What broke me was knowing that my dad, this hardworking, quiet, honest man, had no idea what was really going on. No idea what my mom and sister had been doing behind his back for years. He was smiling at a lie. And that afternoon, standing there with my cold food and my silence, I made a decision. I was going to tell him the truth. All of it. Before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to where this story really begins. I grew up in a house that looked perfectly normal from the outside. 3 bedrooms. A small garden. A father who left early every morning and came home tired every evening. A mother who kept the house running. 2 daughters, my sister Nadia, who is 3 years older than me and me. From the outside, we looked like a regular family. But inside that house, there were 2 completely different worlds. Nadia's world and everyone else's. I don't say this to sound bitter. I say it because it is simply the truth, and it took me years to even admit it to myself. You spend so long trying to convince yourself that you're imagining it, that you're being too sensitive, that maybe you just need to try harder, be better, be more. But some things are impossible to unsee once you finally open your eyes. My mom always had a special way of looking at Nadia. Soft. Warm. Like Nadia was something precious she was always protecting. When Nadia walked into a room, my mom's face changed. It lit up. When I walked into a room, my mom looked at me the same way she looked at the dishes that needed washing. Functional. Expected. Unremarkable. I remember being 7 years old and coming home with a drawing I had made at school. My teacher had put a gold star on it. I was so proud. I ran inside and held it up to my mom. She looked at it for maybe 2 seconds. Put it on the table, she said, already turning back to the stove. That same week, Nadia brought home a drawing, a simpler one. Honestly, no gold star, and my mom framed it. It hung on the wall in the hallway for years. I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. It always did. Have you ever felt like no matter what you did, it was never quite enough? Like you were living in someone else's shadow inside your own home? That was my childhood. Always almost enough. Never fully chosen. As we got older, the favoritism stopped being subtle. When Nadia wanted a new phone at 16, she got it within the week. When I asked for a new school bag because mine had a broken strap, my mom told me to use tape. And I did. I used tape on that bag for the rest of the school year. When Nadia failed 2 subjects in 10th grade, my mom sat with her, hired a tutor, made her special meals to help her focus. When I came home with top marks in every subject, my mom said, "Good. Don't get arrogant." That was it. That was my celebration. But here is what I didn't understand then, what I wouldn't understand for years, was that my mom's favoritism wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just about love or attention. It was about money. My dad worked hard his entire life. He owned a small transport business, nothing glamorous, but steady. He was careful with money, saved everything, invested in the house, in a small plot of land, and built up a modest but real amount of savings. He always said, "Everything I have is for both my daughters equally." My mom heard those words. She just had different plans. I didn't know it yet, but I would find out. And when I did, nothing would ever be the same. The year I turned 26, my dad announced that he was retiring. He had worked for over 30 years. His knees were bad. His back hurt. And he had finally decided it was time to rest. He sat us all down at the dinner table, me, my mom, Nadia, and Nadia's husband Farhan, and he said, "I want to divide everything fairly. The house, the land, the savings." I want both my daughters taken care of. I remember feeling something warm bloom in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Like I was part of this family, in a real way. Like everything my dad had built was actually also mine, at least in part. I should have seen it coming. The smile my mom and Nadia exchanged across the table. So quick. So small. I almost missed it. Almost. Over the next few months, my dad started the process of getting his finances in order. He talked to a lawyer. He talked about writing a proper will. He was organized, thorough. That was his personality. He wanted everything clean and clear. During this time, I noticed things shifting. My mom suddenly became very busy with paperwork. She was always on the phone with Nadia. Whenever I walked into a room where they were talking, the conversation changed. Light, meaningless words replaced whatever had been there before. Nadia started coming over more often. Not to spend time with the family, at least, that's not what it felt like. She came over and spent hours in the back room with my mom, door closed, voices low. I told myself I was being paranoid. My dad seemed happy. He was relaxed, excited even, talking about a small trip he wanted to take with my mom once everything was settled. He had never taken a real vacation in his life. He deserved it. I didn't want to ruin his peace with my suspicions. But then small things started adding up. I overheard my mom on the phone one evening saying, "He doesn't need to know about that account right now."
Which account?
I asked my mom casually the next day if Dad had multiple bank accounts for the business. She looked at me with sharp eyes and said, "Why are you asking? That's not your business." Not your business. I was his daughter. His family. But apparently the family finances were not my business. That's when the warmth I had felt started cooling. Something was being built around me, walls I couldn't see yet, plans I hadn't been told. And I was the only one who didn't know the architecture. The celebration happened on a Saturday. My dad had asked everyone to come to the house. He wanted to formally announce his retirement and share what he had decided about the property and savings. He was proud of what he had built, and he wanted to honor it properly. I got there early. I helped set up the table. I told myself I was nervous for nothing. My Aunt Rahana, my dad's younger sister, came with her husband. 2 of my dad's old colleagues were there. A family friend. It was warm, casual, celebratory. My mom had cooked my dad's favorite food. Nadia arrived with Farhan, looking polished and calm, like someone who already knew the ending of the movie. I noticed that. My dad stood up after the meal and started speaking. He talked about his life, about how hard he had worked, about how much he loved his family. I felt tears building and I blinked them back. Then he started talking about the distribution. He said the plot of land would be divided equally.
Good.
My heart lifted. Then he said the business assets, the remaining trucks and contracts, had already been transferred. Transferred. Past tense. I frowned. Transferred to who? I asked. My dad looked at my mom. Something passed between them. He said, "Your mother handled most of the paperwork. She felt it was simpler to." "It's all in Nadia's name," my mom said.
Smooth. Calm.
Like it was obvious. I felt the room tilt. "The savings account too," Nadia added, not looking at me. "It made more sense for one person to manage it." "And the house?" I asked. My voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. My dad looked confused now. "The house, I thought we discussed." "We did discuss it," my mom said firmly. "And we agreed. Nadia and Farhan will maintain this house. They'll take care of you. It's the practical choice." My dad nodded slowly, like he was remembering a conversation I was not part of. I looked around the room. My Aunt Rahana was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The other guests were suddenly very interested in their plates. And then my mom looked at me and said, "You're independent. You have your job. You don't need the same support." This wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. Confirmation of everything I had felt for 26 years, but never been able to name. Not unloved. Not forgotten. Deliberately excluded. And worse, my father had been managed. Carefully, quietly, over months, his decisions had been shaped, redirected, softened, until he had agreed to things he maybe never fully understood. He looked at me now, and I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not guilt. Confusion. He didn't know everything. I was suddenly completely sure of that. I didn't cry that day. I wanted to. But something harder than sadness took over. I drove home that evening and I sat in my apartment and I thought. I thought about every strange phone call. Every closed door. Every time my mom had redirected my dad's attention. Every document he had signed without fully reading because he trusted her. My dad was not a suspicious man. He loved my mom. He believed in her. That trust, that beautiful, innocent trust had been used against him. I started going back through everything I knew. I called my Aunt Rahana that night. She was the one person in the family who had always been kind to me. She answered on the second ring. "I saw your face today," she said before I could speak. "I've been waiting for this call." She told me things she had seen over the past year. She had been at the house once when my mom and Nadia were going through financial papers, and when they saw her, they quickly put them away. She had thought it was strange. She hadn't said anything because she didn't want to cause trouble. But what kind of trouble was it? I asked her. "The kind your father doesn't know about," she said. Over the next 2 weeks, I did something I had never done before. I paid attention. I spoke to my father's old business partner, Uncle Saeed, a man who had worked with my dad for 15 years. He confirmed that the business transfer had happened very fast, faster than was normal, and that he had tried to speak to my dad about it, but my dad had said, "My wife took care of it. My wife took care of it." Those 5 words told me everything. I talked to the lawyer my dad had initially consulted, not his private business, but just asked general questions. And I found out that my dad had visited him twice. But the documents that were eventually filed, they had been prepared by a different lawyer. One my mom had chosen. One that Nadia's husband Farhan had recommended. That's when everything changed. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It wasn't just a mother loving one daughter more. This was planned.
Strategic.
And my father, the most hard-working, honest person I had ever known, was the one being truly robbed.
Not me.
Him. His savings. His life's work.
Moved.
Managed. Quietly redirected, while he smiled and clapped and talked about a vacation. I stopped feeling hurt. I started feeling something else entirely. I didn't sleep much that week. I kept thinking about what to do, whether to do anything at all. A part of me whispered, "This is not your fight. You already lost. Walk away. Build your own life. You have a job, an apartment, be grateful and go." I almost listened to that voice. But then I thought about my dad on that Saturday. The way he had looked when I asked about the house. That flicker of confusion in his eyes. That moment where I could see him trying to remember what he had actually agreed to and not being entirely sure. He was a man who had given his whole life to his family. He had worked in the cold, in the heat, through sickness, through exhaustion. He had never once asked for gratitude. He just kept going. He deserved to know the truth. Not because it would get me anything. By this point, I had accepted that the money was probably already gone, transferred, signed, filed away where it would be very difficult to reclaim. That battle would take years in a court and cost more than it was worth. But my father deserved to know who he was living with, what had been done around him, behind him, while he was busy trusting. He deserved that. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to protect what was left. I made a decision. I was done being quiet. Not angry. Not hysterical. Not emotional in the way they would expect, dismiss, and use against me. I was going to be calm, factual,
Clear.
I was going to show my father the truth, and I was going to let him decide what to do with it. That was my only job. I spent a week preparing. I wrote everything down in a clear, organized way. Not a list of complaints. Not a diary of hurt feelings. Facts.
Dates.
Names. Documents. A timeline that anyone, especially a lawyer, could follow. I spoke to Uncle Saeed again and asked him to write down what he remembered. He agreed. He had respected my father for too long to stay silent. I asked Aunt Rahana if she would be willing to speak to my father directly.
She said yes.
Without hesitation, I found the name of an independent financial lawyer, someone with no connection to anyone in our family, and I made an appointment. I explained the situation. She told me that if the transfers had been done without full informed consent, there might be legal avenues worth exploring. She also told me to document everything before I confronted anyone. I did exactly that. I also did something deeply personal. I wrote my father a letter. Not a legal document. Not evidence. Just a letter from me to him, daughter to father. I told him about my childhood. Not to hurt him, he didn't know what had been going on. I truly believe that. But I wanted him to understand the full picture. The years of small erasures. The way I had learned not to ask for things. The way I had believed for a long time that maybe I just deserved less. I told him that I didn't want anything from him. That this was not about inheritance or money or being chosen. I told him I was showing him the truth because I loved him. And because lies, even comfortable ones, have a way of costing more in the end. I sealed the letter. I called Aunt Rihanna, and I asked her if she would come with me. She said, "I've been ready for years." We went to my father on a Tuesday evening. No announcement. No big gathering. Just the two of us, arriving at the house when I knew my mom would be at her weekly ladies group, a 2-hour window I had carefully noted. My dad opened the door and looked at us with surprise. Come in, he said, the way he always did, warm and open. I looked at his face, his tired eyes, his proud, gentle face, and I thought, he deserves this.
He deserves to know.
I sat down, took a breath, and I said, Baba, I need to show you some things, and I need you to really listen. He listened. For over an hour, he sat across from me, and he listened. I showed him the timeline, the documents I had gathered, Uncle Saeed's written account. I explained, clearly and without emotion, what had been done and when. I told him about the different lawyer, about the speed of the transfers, about the account my mom had told someone he doesn't need to know about. Aunt Rihanna spoke, too. She told him what she had seen that day with the papers. She told him she had been worried for a long time, but hadn't known how to approach it. My father didn't say much. He sat very still. That was what struck me most. He is not a man who goes still easily. He is always moving, adjusting, fidgeting, tapping his fingers. But he went completely still. When I finished, he looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I had prepared for anger, for denial, for him to defend my mom. I had not prepared for that question. I took a steady breath and said, "Because I wasn't sure, Baba. And because I didn't want to be the daughter who caused problems. I spent my whole life not wanting to be a problem." Something moved across his face.
Pain, maybe.
Recognition. "You were never a problem," he said quietly. And then the door opened. My mom and Nadia came home early.
I don't know why.
Maybe some instinct. Maybe coincidence. They walked into the living room and saw us, me, Aunt Rihanna, the papers spread on the coffee table. My mom's expression shifted so fast it was almost impressive. From surprise, to calculation, to a carefully constructed hurt. "What is this?" she asked, looking at my father, not at me, already working the angle. "This is the truth," I said, calmly. "Something you've been keeping from him for a long time." "You've always been jealous," Nadia said, voice tight. "You've always tried to cause trouble." I looked at her. I felt nothing sharp, nothing angry, just tired clarity. "Nadia," I said, "I have every document here. Signed, dated. I have a lawyer who's reviewed them. I'm not making accusations. I'm showing facts." I turned to my mother. "You told someone he didn't need to know about an account. His money, his life's work. And you used his trust to do it." My mom opened her mouth. I kept going, still calm. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here because my father deserved to know. What he does with this information is his choice. Not mine. Not yours." I stood up. "He built everything in this house. He earned it. He trusted you with it. You should have to look him in the eyes when he asks you about it." I picked at my bag. "I already have. I didn't need to do anything else." The truth was out. The documents were on the table. My father had seen them with his own eyes. Within a week, he contacted his original lawyer. The one he had first consulted before my mom had steered him elsewhere. That lawyer reviewed everything and confirmed what the independent advisor had told me. Several of the transfers could be contested. The process would take time, but it was not hopeless. My father also quietly opened a new account. In his name only. He didn't throw anyone out of the house. He didn't shout. He didn't make scenes. But something shifted in that house permanently. I heard from Aunt Rahana that he had sat my mom down and asked her, very quietly, about the account. And she had tried to explain it away. And he had listened. And then he had said, I want to see everything. Every account. Every document. Every paper with my name on it. She had no real choice but to comply. The full picture that emerged wasn't as catastrophic as it could have been. My dad's core assets were largely protected by the fact that his name was still on the property. But a significant portion of savings had been moved in ways that clearly hadn't been discussed with him. That process of moving it back was ongoing. Nadia called me 3 times that week. I didn't answer. She sent messages. First angry, then accusatory, then, after a few days, something that was almost an apology but not quite. It was the kind of message that blamed circumstances more than people. Things got complicated. You don't understand the pressure. Mom just wanted what was best. I read each one. I didn't reply. What they had done didn't need my anger to have consequences. The consequences came from my father's eyes. From the silence in that house. From the shift in how he moved through his own home, more carefully now, more aware. They had lost something with him that no legal document could fix. His unconditional trust. And that, for a man like my father, was everything. 6 months later, my life looked different. Not dramatically, not in the way movies promise. I didn't suddenly get everything I had been denied. The money was complicated and would remain complicated for some time. But other things changed. Things that matter more. My father started calling me, regularly.
Just to talk.
About nothing, his garden, the news, what he had eaten for lunch. Calls that felt like the conversations we should have been having for years, but somehow hadn't. One afternoon, he came to visit my apartment for the first time. He stood in my small living room, looked around at the bookshelves and the plants and the modest but organized space I had built for myself, and he said, "You did all of this yourself." "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "I didn't see enough of this," he said. "Meaning me. Meaning my life. Meaning all the years I had been building something quietly while no one was watching. You can see it now." And that was enough. Aunt Rahana became a steady presence in my life. We had dinner together at least once a month. She told me stories about my father when he was young, the same stubbornness, the same quiet pride. It made me love him more. I also found, in this period, something I hadn't expected: relief. I had carried something heavy for a very long time, the weight of being overlooked, the constant low hum of, "Am I imagining this?" The exhausting effort of trying to be enough for people who had already decided you weren't. Putting it down was like finally being able to breathe all the way. I wasn't angry at my mother. Not anymore. Anger is heavy. It requires your attention. It demands your energy. I was simply free of her. I had spent years hoping she would change. Hoping that one day she would look at me the way she looked at Nadia. I stopped hoping for that. And in the space where that hope had been, I planted something else. My own life. My own choices. My own people, the ones who had chosen me back. Have you ever realized that the moment you stop trying to earn love from someone who doesn't give it, you suddenly have so much more energy for everyone who already does? That was where I found myself. Full. Whole. Finally. If you've made it this far, maybe something in this story felt familiar. Maybe you know what it's like to grow up in a house where love had a hierarchy. Where you were always one position lower than someone else, no matter how hard you tried. Maybe you spent years wondering if you were the problem. I want to tell you something clearly. You were not the problem. Some people in our lives have already made decisions about us that have nothing to do with who we actually are. And no amount of achievement, silence, or sacrifice will change those decisions. Because they were never really about you. They were about something in them. The mistake I made for years was trying to earn a place at a table where the seating had already been decided. The bravest thing I ever did was stop asking for a seat and build my own table. The other thing I want to say is this. Speaking the truth is not the same as seeking revenge. I didn't expose what my mom and sister did because I wanted to destroy them. I did it because my father, a good, honest man, deserved to see clearly. Truth is not a weapon. It's a gift. Even when it's painful. Especially when it's painful. And if there is someone in your life who has been kept in the dark, someone you love who is being quietly misled, ask yourself this. What would it cost them to know the truth? And what is it costing them not to? Because silence, when it protects the wrong people, isn't kindness. It's just a different kind of betrayal. I ended that year closer to my father than I had ever been. Lighter than I had been in decades. Richer, in the only ways that actually last. Not every family story ends with a reunion. Not every parent wakes up. Not every sibling chooses better. But some do. And even when they don't, you can still choose yourself. You can still walk toward truth, even when it costs you. You can still build something real, even if you have to build it alone. Because family is not who stays by blood. It's who stays by choice. And the first person who needs to choose you is you.